All right.
Hey guys,
Hello.
how's it going? Hey.
Good. Thanks. First, thanks for doing this. I miss the after convention hanging out with people, talking about what people are working on, that stuff. I miss shows in general, but I thought it would be good to talk creatively. We've all been published different ways through different publishers. Just laid back, have a good time talking comics or related like to that type of stuff. So if you guys want to introduce yourselves, we can start and go clockwise, I guess, with Roland. If you want to go first.
Sure, I'll be happy to.
All right.
My name's Roland Mann. I am an instructor at Full Sail University, where I teach the coolest class at the university. I teach writing for comics and graphic novels. Excuse me. Broke into comics in the 1980s on the high point of the black and white boom, and wrote a whole bunch of independent comics. Got hired by Malibu Comics, went out there to California and edited a bunch of stuff for them, which is kind of where most people know me from. And then Marvel bought Malibu. I became a Marvel editor by default, and yes, Spider-Man came on my paycheck, so it was very cool. And then about a year and a half later, Marvel proceeded to fire everybody. So, excuse me, I got a frog in my throat. And then that's when I launched my small press label, Silverline. And sorry, I got people hollering at me at the door. Did you need something? Okay. But it was the wrong time to do it because the industry was busting. And I lost a lot of money in the late 90s on comic books. So, yeah. But I'm doing it again now since I've started teaching. I've been doing it again for about 5 years. Thanks to print on demand and the technology and all that kind of stuff. It's a whole different ballgame, and I'm having a lot of fun.
For all your efforts, you deserve to have fun.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I mean, it's comic books. We should be having fun, right?
Yes, absolutely. Cool. Am I next? Is clockwise?
Yeah, I think you, Daniel. Yeah, we'll go around.
All right, cool. All right. Well, gosh, I wasn't prepared for this. I'm so nervous. So I'm Daniel Corey, and I'm a Full Sail alum. I think all of us here are. I know all of us here are Full Sail people here. But I'm a writer, and I've done some independent comics. I started my first book, Profit, which was independent release through my own company, Danger Cat, and we put that out in about 2009. Worked with artist Anthony Dietchidue on that, and then Anthony and I rolled over to doing my Moriarty series together, and that got picked up by Image in 2010, released in beginning 2011. We did 2 volumes of that and released a hardcover 2013. Had a really nice time with that, and then I put out Red City with Image Comics after that, and then I did another title called Bloodworth, which was something I put together with artist Chris Fenolio, and that actually hasn't been published, but it's been optioned, and that's why. But I'll release details on that in a later date when I can talk about it more. Sure. But and then other than that, I also work in broadcast news and transcription, and work with a lot of different some of the major networks doing that, and photographer, musician, singer, songwriter, doing a lot of stuff, I guess, as much as I can out here in LA. So onto the Kurt Cobain of our group here.
I like that. So, I'm Wes Locher. I'm also, like these fine gentlemen at all my angles, a writer, a Full Sail graduate. Done a lot of work in comics, a lot of self-published stuff. I've worked with a couple of cool indie publications like Alterna Comics and Action Lab Entertainment, Marcosia Enterprises, Arcana Comics. The list goes on. A lot of cool titles over the years. By day, I work in the video game industry as a writer, and just try to keep busy. I say yes to way too much stuff, and then scramble to get everything done. of quality work. So yeah, thanks for having me, and it's nice to be in such illustrious company with some good friends.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've wanted to do this because at first we were just doing like, private Zoom meetings and with other creators, and it's just like a roundtable kind of talking about, oh, this is what we're working on, this is what I want to do, type of thing. But then I thought, we could probably answer a lot of questions this way if we live streamed it with, like, I thought with our group that, like my first publication was this year through Antarctic Press, which Wes lettered for us. Okay. And, Wes has gone through Alterna and some of the other ones like that. Daniel's gone through Image. Roland does, prints his own stuff through Silverline, and has that Marvel and Malibu background. So I just thought it'd be, good that we could kind of give our experiences on how that worked with submitting to publishers, getting published. Like I've done 2 Kickstarters since that being published. And while they're both successful, like I've learned so much about the back stuff that you don't even think about, like, pricing printers and, finding, the colorist, or, getting lucky and getting an artist that can do inking and drawing it. So for me, it's been interesting. The publisher that I went through, like I wouldn't, like saying bad, but I wouldn't go through them again, just because it was kind of not the greatest experience. But it was a lot of pitching. I've pitched to Image, I've pitched to Scout, I've pitched to some of the other people as well. And I think like everybody else, I've gotten the either no answer or the, well, this isn't really what we're looking for right now, but we'll keep it in our back pocket for a little while. So I don't know if you guys want to tell some of your experience with publishers and the route you went through.
The most frustrating feedback is, but it's nice feedback to get. But the most frustrating feedback to get in a rejection is, show us your next thing.
Yeah.
That's nice because it's like, we like this well enough to ask you to show us your next thing, but then it's like, okay, I'll get back to you in 5 years.
Right. Yeah.
Because people don't understand how. I mean, the person who says it understands, but I'm saying for the audience here, folks that are watching that haven't made comics before, it takes that long to make, a book. With Moriarty, from the time Anthony and I started working on it to the time our hardcover collection was published, it was 5 years,
Wow.
And for Bloodworth, where it was 4 issues, 1 trade, it took 5 years, so just, Red City was relatively quick at maybe 2 years, so. But yeah, I guess, my experience was probably just like any of you guys here. When Anthony and I were first doing Profit together, I just went to every convention and I went and talked. I went to every booth with every publisher, talked to every editor I could, and showed them pages. And there was a process over a course of shows where I'd go back and show them more work that we had done. And then we started working on Moriarty. I started showing them that, and then I published Profit and and went on and on. But it was about 2 years of shopping Profit before I just ended up putting that out myself. It was the most reasonable thing to do at the time. But then with Moriarty, it was like, I really want somebody else to publish this. And I showed it to every single publisher, every single publisher said no. And I was like, well, Image is all that's left, but I mean, they're not gonna, and they got this whole submission process you got to go through, and it's just, I got to fill out all these things and write all these things. It's such a pain. I'll wait and do that later, maybe. And they're the ones that said yes, of course. So that was my experience.
Yeah,
it's difficult.
So
yeah,
I guess,
sorry,
I just want to touch on that really quick with Image, because I've had like some friends that publish through Image, and they've kind of said that it was great to publish through Image and everything, but that there's like a ledger that carries over. So like if your books are being held by Image, that you're paying, I guess, for them to hold those books.
Yeah, that comes out of sales.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you end up paying for everything out of sales.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is something to bear in mind. I just, because I think a lot of people think, hey, Image is going to do this, and I get to keep the IP, and I get money, and it's just
you got to sell a lot of copies to get money.
But
yeah, you don't get money.
Yeah. you got to sell Walking Dead numbers to get money.
Yeah, but you keep that IP, and it gets you some really great cred, and you own it. And that opens so many doors to have an Image book.
The Image I carries a lot of clout.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Mark, you said you run a couple Kickstarters and you learned a lot while you were doing them, and that's one of the things that I always say is that you can read about making comics all day long, you can talk about it all day long, you can go to conventions and trade stories with other people, but until you get your hands dirty, until you get in there and make them yourself and do it, get it done, you don't know nothing. You think you do, right? You think, I know how all this is. No, you don't. You got to get in there and you got to do it. And it irritates me to hear none of you said this, right? Well, of course, Daniel was long before. To clarify, I'm not a graduate of Full Sail. I teach there. So yeah. But
they're all alums.
The three of you are alums, right? But it frustrates me to hear students say, I'm going to wait until I graduate and then I'm going to do this. And my question is always, well, why are you waiting? Why, do it now. You start it now. Get the process going because you got to learn. It's like you think that just because you have that piece of paper that says I graduated, suddenly all the doors are going to fly open. It doesn't work that way. You got to start working.
Do it while you're young and eager /
You can still be eager as you get older. It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, it's just that you said you learned that when you did it, and I think that's an important note.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Weston, when did you start making your first comic?
I started back in about 2012, and I kind of started off with like a lot of shorter stuff. I knew that if I just jumped into like a 100-page graphic novel, I was going to make a lot of mistakes along the way, which is entirely true. And I made a lot of mistakes with the short comics that I did. But the advantage to that is that when you do something that's short, maybe 3 pages or 5 pages, it's a lot easier to get an artist to commit to doing that. And especially if they're trying to build up their portfolio and they don't necessarily need to put money in their pocket. So I was able to cultivate a lot of really good relationships starting off with just doing those short comics, and then just developing a friendship with them, and then kind of moving them to the next thing, saying, hey, now let's go do a one shot, let's do a 3-issue miniseries, and just started to get bigger and bigger projects as I went along. And thankfully,
we lost Wes.
Lost Wes.
I've got a great Wes story though. When I'll tell it once he gets back on.
When he comes back.
Yeah, I've got a great Wes story from when he was a student. But
see, I missed out on Roland. I didn't have Roland as a professor for the class.
So correct me if I'm wrong. So I've only taken like 2 vacations at the whole 9 years I've been at Full Sail. Okay. Wow. So I know. I really, my wife tells me you got to take more. But if I'm not mistaken, didn't I send you a message and say, hey, I'm not you specifically, but I sent it to the class and I said, hey, everybody. I'm taking a vacation. If comics are your thing and you really wanted to have me as an instructor, you got to take December off because I'm not going to be there. Yeah. I've taken 2 Decembers off, which were great for me, and So, and then that's what Wes said after that.
Yeah, right. Sorry, my interconnection's not playing nice tonight, so if that happens again, I apologize. But did you finish my story for me, Roland?
Yeah.
Perfect. So made a bunch of comics, made a lot of friends. Eventually, I started getting contracts for graphic novel length projects, and I have a whole bunch of those under my belt, and very, very few of them, it's funny, have actually gone on to make money. And a lot of that is just attributed to the contracts that you're so eager to sign when you're starting off that you don't necessarily understand some of the red tape that comes along with them. So even, contracts at a smaller publisher are definitely something worth looking over in depth. Don't just rush to the end where you sign your name. Really pay attention. If you know an entertainment lawyer or know somebody with experience that will cut you a deal on reading your contract, have them do it. Because, in retrospect, I made a couple of bad decisions along the way, but I also made a couple of great decisions. And some of the books that I've done, have netted royalties that, let me pay my mortgage some months. So it was, I've had thankfully some good luck, and I, work with those publishers more and more because there's money on the table in that situation. So, it's, you don't necessarily need to run around to every publisher on the block and try to get your name on a book with everybody. If you know that you can go to this destination and you have a relationship, they'll look at your work. You don't have to go through, the slush pile to get your stuff seen. And doing stuff that way has been a big advantage for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, make friendships is like the number one piece of info. It's beyond the business relationships. Just be cool, be easy to work with, be fun to work with, have cool ideas, and be collaborative, because all those things will take you a really long way.
Isn't that one of Full Sail's mantras? Network, network, network.
It should be everybody's mantra that wants to work in the creative business, for sure.
Yeah.
So can I tell my West story now?
Sure.
All right. So my West story is this. Okay. I guess Wes, you may have to help me with the years because I don't remember, but this was probably around 2013 or so. I went to speak to one of the very first month classes at Full Sail. Wes was in that class. And Chris Ramsey, who was the instructor, invited me to come talk just for a brief period of time about comic books. It was a very, very broad thing. And Wes reached out to me and later said, "Hey, I'd like to meet with you sometime and talk about comics." And I'm like, "Great!" Of course, you guys all know Full Sail, so I'm like, "Yes, someone's interested in comic books. Yes, all right." So we met, and one of the little restaurants there near the university, and Wes just begins to pepper me with all these questions, right? He had just all these questions, boom, 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 asking me this and asking me that, right? So for about an hour, he's asking me all contract questions, creator questions, all kinds of stuff, right? And so after about an hour, I said, "So, where are you at? You're wanting to do this. Tell me where you're standing." He goes, "Oh, I've signed 2 contracts." I'm like, "What the heck?" he had already done so much of this stuff that he was asking me about, and I'm like, "This is fantastic, dude, but you don't need to be asking me this because you've already got it done, right?" That's my West story.
Well, in all fairness, I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't making stupid mistakes. I figured, if he doesn't know all this, then he'll just tell it to me straight, which you did, very thankfully. So I appreciate your wisdom, and I appreciate you having that lunch with me, because again, it was not something where I didn't want anything from you other than just to talk to you about something that we both loved. And I
think your words were "pick my brain."
Yeah, and I went in with the goal of, hey, I should probably be friends with this person, and here we are, years later or something. And
my memory of and you don't have to correct me if I'm wrong, but my memory of the most informative thing I told you during that meeting was backing up the blacks.
Right.
On the colors, right? It was backing up the blacks, and you're like, "Oh, okay, we fixed that whole problem."
It did. That actually was a huge thing that saved an entire graphic novel by you telling me that.
So, and could you explain what that concept is for the audience?
In a nutshell, when you color, you have 4 colors, right? Comics are generally printed 4: cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. If you aren't careful, you don't color. When you print, the black will print, and it will be a kind of a faded out color, but you'll see where the color is colored outside the lines and it goes into the black, and that's really glossy, right? And it looks really nice, but the places in the black that they don't color is really kind of washed out. All you have to do is put a layer of color behind that black, and it's just, I don't know if there's a more technical term for it or not in the design world, but we just, at Malibu, we just always called it backing up the blacks, which just meant you put another something there behind the blacks so that has that crisp sheen look throughout the entire page. That's about as technical as you're going to get from me.
Obviously. Yeah.
So since we're all writers, and this is covered in Roland's class, so if you want to go to Full Sail and take Roland's class, then you'll get this as well. But he covers basically, like where to look for artists and where good ideas like that. And I know it may be dated. I think like Pencil Jack was one that Roland had given, and I haven't gone in a long time.
Yeah.
Digital webbing is like one that I will still go to on and off, but I think digital webbing is still good. I didn't know about
Lumberjack is
art
great.
station.
It's just not as heavily used as it was about
Yeah.
6, 7, 8 years ago. It used
Yeah.
to be really heavily used there, but I guess and they're telling me, right? So some of the younger artists that I talked to telling me that there's been a transition to ArtStation.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
there's still, there's still people that use DeviantArt, which surprised me.
it's noisy. It's noisy, but there's a lot of if you can tune out the noise, you can find some talent there.
I've had difficulties with just in the past now, but like with DeviantArt, like emailing artists, I like, hey, I'd like to pay you to draw art for me. You hear back maybe 1 out of 50 people will actually email you back. So I don't know if it's because they're not active on there or what, but yeah, I don't know. But yeah, ArtStation seems to be kind of the happening thing. That's definitely where artists are everybody's posting there right now.
Yep.
For a while now, for sure.
Wes,
So,
you want to tell us your secrets of where you find artists?
Oh, well, if I told all my secrets, then what would I have left? Again, a lot of it just comes back to I have such a database of friends that I can go to if I need something, and kind of like Dan does. You see the same names over and over on his books. It's because you develop great relationships with these folks when you have a good working relationship. And so, if he needs art, he knows who to call. If he needs letters, he knows who to call. And it's kind of the same with me. I just have a stock group of people that I know, hey, so-and-so would be really good for this if they have the time, if they have the interest, if they have the bandwidth to take it on. And through those creative people, you meet their friends or you see who else they're working with. And so for me, like my circle is very like intermingling of a lot of folks at the moment. So I haven't thankfully had to like go cold calling in years and years and years, which is nice. But I also kind of miss that excitement. It's got that like new relationship feeling at the beginning. So, but I wouldn't know where to go. I wouldn't have known about ArtStation unless I heard it here first. So that was a good exclusive.
Yeah, it's funny because like Anthony, who I worked with on, my first 3 titles, I met him through my neighbor, Mario. Mario lived 2 doors down from us. And I got an idea. I wanted to do a comic, and I'm driving through the parking lot of our apartment building, and Mario's in the parking lot there. And I stopped and rolled down the window. I was like, "Hey, you just he's an artist. So I'm like, hey, are you interested in doing comics? I want to do a comic." He's like, "No, I don't really do comic art, but I got a guy who does. I'll send you his info." I'm like, "Okay." And they were working together at Universal down the street. I'm in LA at Universal Studio City here, and they were working together at Universal down the street doing caricature art. And he put me in touch with Anthony, and I met Anthony at Starbucks, and we ended up working together nonstop for about 7 years, I think. So it's that easy. No, but
just roll your window down and yell at somebody. Hey, you want to draw comics?
Start knocking on the neighbors' doors.
And Anthony lives, 2 blocks from me here in North Hollywood, which is crazy. But then, like, I linked up with Chris Fonolio, and Chris, first thing he did with me is he did colors for my Red City book, and then he drew Bloodworth for me. And we worked together for 5 years straight, I think, nonstop. And, that was Image Expo, and 2012 Image Expo. It was Image's 20th anniversary, and it was up in Berkeley. And it was an all Image con at this Marriott there. And Anthony, we're at our table, and this kid comes by, and he's showing us his art, and it was Chris, and I'm like, gosh, I really like this. This is good, And, I kept in touch with Chris. We linked up on social media and all this, and then I didn't have anything for him. But then it was about a year or so later, I was like, hey, you want to do color on an Image book? And it was his first opportunity, So, it was all organic, it all has, part of it is live in an area where there's publishers are here and there's artists everywhere. So that really helps to, be in LA. But if you're not in LA, there's a million other ways you can do it, and I think we're all proof of that. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, and one of the ways that for me that it happens sometimes is that I'll be working with somebody, and obviously they got to enjoy the whole process, but then they'll say, "Hey, I got a buddy who wants to do a comic book. let me turn you on to my buddy, right? And then you reach out to the buddy and you say, hey, your friend says that you might be interested in doing a comic, and it's like, yeah, he says really good things about the project y'all are doing, and I would be interested. And it kind of just goes back to that whole networking thing. Is that I there's probably 2 projects I'm working on right now only because another artist recommended that we pair up. So
another interesting thing, is when doing the con circuit as a creator. Once you're in the game and you've published and you do the con circuit, you can meet people. So I became friends with Janet Leigh, who's an Eisner winner, and part of it that helped was we had someone in common. It's Dave Lanphier, and
Dave.
Dave. Yeah, everybody knows Dave. Dave has lettered and designed everybody's books. You already worked at Malibu, I think.
He did. He worked at Malibu. He sure did.
Yeah, going back, so Dave is like, I think Dave knows everybody. If you know Dave, you're in good with Dave, you can meet a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I met Dave through a friend who's a creator here in LA named Joelle Sellner, and I met her through a group called Comic Book Sunday, which is a networking group that Ben Jackendob is a local guy who's huge in the scene and works in film companies and such, and he started that networking group. I met her. She introduced me to Dave. Dave was tight with, I'd been working with Jim Kruger, whom I became friends with, all this. Anyways, through all that, I met Janet the first time through Dave at San Diego Comic-Con back in like 2011, 2010. And then Janet was my neighbor across the aisle at New York Comic-Con back in like 2014. And every morning I'd go across the way and talk to her and chat. And we just got along so well and just love her, And after a few years of talking, we're like, we'd love to work together. We want to work together. And then she's like, I want to do something. I want to do something violent. I want to do something with blood. Because she was really specialized in these Jane Austen adaptations, which are beautiful. She's like, I love those, but I want to do just that, And so I'm like, I had this Moriarty one shot, and I'm like, oh, here, you want to draw this? And so we worked on that together. And I got these pages back, and part of it was the writing. I didn't realize how violent it was. But I'm like, oh, it's violent. But man, she really, blood, so much blood. But it was a really strong story. She did a wonderful job on that. But that was just like a whole that I attribute that to the con scene.
Yeah.
And Dave Lanphier. So I guess go to a lot of cons and know Dave Lanphier. That's
yeah. And I'll even take that one step further. Is I actually met Daniel at New York Comic-Con randomly. That was the first time. Even though we have all these connections with people and Full Sail and stuff.
Full Sail.
No, I just
I
I
made
saw
that
him.
assumption.
Yeah, I saw him, and I knew his books. I'd been kind of following his work. I'd read the first volume of Moriarty, so I just walked up and was like, "Hey, I'm a Full Sail guy," and so we talked a little bit, and then we started seeing each other at all these Full Sail events, and so it's funny. You just talk to people, and magical things happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you were at Hall of Fame. I guess that same year, maybe.
I think so. Yeah.
That was like 2015 or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I saw your interaction. That's why I just assumed that you knew each other through Full Sail.
No, just walked up to him.
That was the binding link.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. But
so same thing. Like I reached out to Daniel while I was at Full Sail because his book's in the library and it's everybody reads it. So and then we actually met last year at LA Comic-Con for the first time. So I was looking forward to it again this year, but it is what it is.
Yeah. But that was cool meeting you the first time, and that was like you had just recently done some new stuff, and so I was like,
we were pitching our first published stuff that was coming out that got pushed back because of pandemic, and then our first Kickstarter stuff that we were putting out too, we were pushing that. So we went to like Golden Apple and some of the other shops just to kind of give them that ash can preview and some prints of the covers and stuff just to drum up some interest.
No, I was really happy to when I met you to see that you were coming along and doing some stuff like that. It's really nice to to run into students that are doing stuff. This guy Johnny, and let me get it. I just met him, so let me get his last name. But he just kickstarted something. I just met him, and Johnny Buza. He's a Full Sail guy, and he's doing a book right now. And I actually got with him on the phone, and Katrina set that up. She contacted me on LinkedIn. Katrina was, at Full Sail. And I got on the phone with him, and he's like, I'm going to all the conventions. I'm meeting everybody. I'm doing this. I've got pages. I got everything. He's like, what should I do? I'm like, you were doing everything. And I told Tony, I said, my purpose for talking to you today is to tell you that you're doing everything right.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's always good to see when, students and alums are really trucking along and doing stuff,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've tried in my time at Full Sail and with Roland, and
we had
trying
lunch.
to get more comic centric stuff brought back in, and it is what it is. But the attempt was there to try to get some more interest in, or like a broader, I guess, expansion of the comic stuff. I thought maybe if they could do not necessarily like a convention, but maybe something outside.
Oh, you mean at Full Sail?
Yeah.
Oh, dude, don't get me started. Oh my goodness, don't get me started about. So, I am very thankful that for my job. I love my class. As I've said already, I think it's the best class at the university. But the anything above me just frustrates the dickens out of me. Full Sail did a student anthology one year. Do you know? Wes knows this. Yeah, Wes, did you? You helped me though. You weren't in it, right?
No, I lettered everything.
Okay, yeah. Oh, so you were in it then, but so Full Sail did an anthology, right? Completely out of the creative writing department, spearheaded by me and a lot of people who helped me. And I said, let's make this an annual thing. That we can, we can set up something where I can get some help. We'll get students that as they come into the program. We'll interview them. They can intern and kind of help, put all this together. And we'll just do it once a year, print on demand. It won't cost us anything. So, long story short, they took it from me. They said, that's a great idea. And they took it from me and nothing happened. Zero. Nothing. Right? So 3 years later, I have a great boss, by the way. 2 years later, something like this. I'm saying, she's like, well, what other ideas can you come up with? I said, well, let's do a Full Sail comic convention. Like, we've got this big venue here that we don't have to pay for. And I'm like, I got enough contacts in the area that and there are enough comic book people here that we could put on a little Full Sail thing. That's it. So we took it to the department at the time. And they were like, that's a great idea. We're going to take that. Ask me if it ever happened. Yeah. So, yeah, don't get me started. That's just so frustrating that just seems like you're just shouting in the wind and yeah. But you're absolutely right, Mark. There's such a possibility for all kind of awesome stuff there on campus. It's just, it goes back to the and I'm sorry if I'm starting to preach, right? It goes back to the thing that unless you're in comics, you don't understand comics. People who are outside of comics don't understand them at all. And they just think, oh, look, I just push a little button and a comic book appears.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's there's an initiation of bring me into this understanding of what it means to make a comic. And it's usually it's people like Johnny who just talk to who already has that, he already did everything and already knew. So that.
And Wes was that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I know everybody here was that way, but it's like the folks that come to me that hey, can I pick your brain? I want to make a comic. I wrote a screenplay and I'd like to make it into a comic book or something like that. And, you can get 10 seconds in till they don't know what they're getting into. Don't just, and folks like that, I'm like, don't do it.
Yeah, that's right.
Don't do it, and often, also, if somebody writes a novel and they're like, I want to adapt my novel into a graphic novel. I'm like, don't do it. Just, you got a novel.
Right, yeah.
All you had to spend to make that was your time.
Right.
That out.
Revel in that.
Yeah. So, for some people, it's like this necessity that, because they have a certain goal in their mind where they think it's a necessity that they have to make a comic or something like that. And there's no have to about comics. It's like, you got to really want it. You got to really want to be a comic person.
Yep.
To do it, and you can always tell in that initial conversation with somebody who approaches you if they want to be a comic person or if they just want to make a comic because they feel like they have to.
Yep.
Sure. And there's so much, information online. You don't have to pick Danny's brain or Roland's brain or my brain to go make a comic. I mean, there's so much research and legwork that you can do on your own. And when I do talk to those people, sometimes I'm amazed. I'm like, clearly they've just never even Googled like how to make a comic book. Right. Like that would answer so many questions right now. But, I understand everybody's got to start somewhere. I don't fault them for it, but I just know that if you're really hungry, there's 10 things you would have done before you came and rung me up and wanted to have a conversation.
Yep.
Yeah, and it reminds me of I was at Sam Ash in Hollywood several months ago, which is a music shop, guitar shop, and this guy is talking to a salesperson. He goes, "What's your most expensive guitar here?" And I'm like, "You need to leave."
You need to leave. Just go away.
This is not right, I don't know what I mean. Obviously that person is coming in on a measure of pretense of,
right.
I want to have the most expensive guitar here, and I can't even play it.
And I'm going to say it loud enough so that everyone hears me.
Yeah,
exactly. And then his girlfriend was with him, and I was sitting there playing something, and she was asking me about playing, and she said something about your fingers, your left hand. And I'm like, oh yeah, you build up big calluses there. She's like, but I spend so much time taking care of those. And I was speechless at that point, but in retrospect, I'm like, I would have said, do you want perfect fingertips or do you want to bring music into the world?
You're like, I do too. I file them every night.
But yeah, but that's a similar sort of thing to where, people have agendas sometimes, and it's not, it takes a very specific mindset to really make a comic and be successful at it. And by being successful, I mean just finishing the product.
Right, getting it made.
Yeah, because, back to an earlier thing, we were talking about contracts and whatnot. And, in the beginning, especially, which the beginning for me has been, now it's 13 years. The beginning is you're going to make deals that aren't great for you, because you got to get in the business, So that's something to keep in mind. It's like, making money in publishing, doing an independent comic is not, you can't have that a priority.
No.
It's creating the IP and owning it.
But also, I would say don't be afraid of making a bad deal when you're first getting started.
Yeah,
because if you make a bad deal, well, you made a deal. It's making a bad deal is better than not making a deal at all.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you don't want to make bad deal after bad deal after bad deal, because then you're just an idiot not learning anything, right? But if you make a bad one, it's like, okay, you know what? I made a bad deal. I learned from it. I'm not going to make the same thing, but I got a deal, so that's it.
Yeah, I know. I make the deal. That's what I tell people a lot of times is, this one guy was telling me he had a self-published novel, and he said there was a major DC artist that loved his self-published novel and wanted to adapt it into a graphic novel. And this was a major name at DC Comics. And he's like, well, DC is owned by Warner Brothers, and they're just gonna screw me over, so I'm not gonna do it. And again, it's like,
okay.
I'm useless and didn't say anything because I'm like, when I confronted with that kind of thing, it's perplexing. I'm just like,
you should come sit in my class for a couple of days.
God bless you. No,
so
but
it's a joy to get students down. Like Mark said, he didn't get the class, but it's a joy to get students like Mark and like Wes who come in saying, "This is something that interests me." It's the ones who are like,
mm-hmm.
When's the next class start?
Yeah.
I read Garfield. Does that count? No, it doesn't count.
I do like Garfield, but
I do too. I do too. I'm not throwing shade at Garfield.
I just got to stand up for Garfield. I'm a big Garfield fan, but you're right. Absolutely, it doesn't count to.
And I think one of the things, like with the contract piece of it too, is that you have to go in and make sure that your artist or whoever you're working with understands that if you're going in 50-50, that's 50-50 after expenses. It's not, hey, we did a Kickstarter and we made, $1,600, so I'm expecting $800. You really need to set that, in the beginning that, hey, we're going to split this, but there's going to be these expenses that
And
you
that's
know
just-
they're going to be there.
That's just language you have to be clear with.
Yeah.
And there's also, Dan mentioned, create an IP. There's two different things, right? You've got an agreement about the comic book itself, right? That will generate money. But then you also have the idea of the intellectual property. So how are you going to split because I know a lot of writers who are like, look, I'm working on this not for the comic book itself. I'm trying to take the intellectual property. So I give the artist everything when it comes to the comic book, right?
Yeah.
Now, and then they're like, I'm going to keep the majority of the intellectual property so that when I go to Hollywood or I go to animation studios or something, I'm going to get that, right? So you have to be careful and know that there's two thoughts here, right? You're talking about splitting money on the comic book itself, which is really not going to generally it's really not going to amount to that much, if anything. Like I said, unless you get Walking Dead numbers, then great, right?
Yeah.
But then it's the intellectual property that you have to look at for the long run.
Yeah, I mean, always make sure the artist is well taken care of.
Yeah.
Out of hand, out of pocket, because it takes a long time to make a page of comic, to draw it. It can take a day and a half, 2 days to draw one page, depending on how bad it is, how difficult it is. So and they got to draw 100 of those. So you need to make sure they're taken care of. Up front, and then your reward on the back end is the ownership,
right?
So Wes, what is that generally how you work with your artists? Or
yeah, typically. I mean, I when I was first starting off, I was definitely paying a lot out of pocket, but at the same time that was good because like I went into every project with a budget. So it was a good practice in, okay, I have this much money. How many pages can I realistically get drawn and colored and produce something? There was the first graphic novel project I did. I was hitting the credit card pretty heavily just to get that thing made. And, it never recoups what you spend on it. But again, it was the matter of, okay, I have something published by a semi-reputable company. And that of course, not only leads to, it gives you more clout as a writer. Artists are more likely to want to work with you because, okay, this person had one thing published, they could probably get something else published. And then beyond that, other publishers are more willing to talk to you. So, I mean, you know how it is. So you got to take that first bad deal, and that opens the doors that were closed to you prior. So thankfully, since then, I've, like I said, I work with a lot of friends. So typically we own everything 50-50. I don't pay a lot of artists anymore. We all just kind of create together. Let's make something that we both love, and that if it becomes more than this comic book, goes on to the animation world, the film world, what have you. We'll both profit from that. Maybe eventually.
Yeah, it's nice you can get to that place though. That you can 50-50 with an artist. I know, like I don't ever advise people because a lot of people want to start off doing that, and writers, I'm like, no, you're not going to finish it probably.
Right.
And, I've never gotten to that storied place where I can just, they'll just do it and trust that some money will come.
Yeah.
Well, beyond that, though, there's also part of me that, if I had to do it all over again, some of these people that I went, 50-50 with, I didn't really know them that well. And there's a big kind of chance that you're taking on a stranger at that point, and trusting them with part of your intellectual property. So I probably would have thought a couple of situations through a little bit more and a little bit better. But you make the mistakes and you don't make them again in the future, unless, like Roland said, unless you're an idiot. So, you have to get those battle scars along the way, though. I mean, if you go through the whole process, if you do 13 years worth of comic books and you don't make any mistakes along the way, it's like, where's the fun in that? You got to sail those pirate waters of the comic book industry, and take your lumps.
Getting into comics to begin with is kind of a mistake. So
yeah, it is.
So you got to be willing. Yeah. So making mistakes and doing the wrong thing in the beginning ends up paying off, really.
Yeah. The common theme that I have is that as I make more comics, I find that I can't look at more and more of my back catalog. And that just tells me, hey, I've learned something from that. Like I can see the mistakes that I made, even if nobody else can see them. I know those mistakes, and I've not made them again in future projects.
Yeah.
Cool.
But that's the important part of that.
So why comics? I guess let's go down that path as to why why each one of you chose comics. Like, I know for me personally, I was that kid that read them when I was younger, and then I would play out these story ideas in my head with my action figures and stuff like that. But for me personally, like, I really love the art aspect of it. I love the creation of characters and stuff with an artist, and then I love seeing that storytelling through the art itself.
Yeah.
So for me, like, I've always just wanted to do comics because, I had that love for comics, but then when you do it, it evolves even more because it's like, damn, I can create, people that are just like Superman or just like Batman and that are my own. And, we've got our own take on them and they're this way because, that's the way that we design them. So
Yeah.
First, Roland, we'll go around
Okay.
the clock again.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of what you said goes for me as well. I mean, I fell in love with comics as a kid and have loved them, my entire life, except for a brief couple of years when I got mad at comics after the crash and I lost all that money. But then they called, like a siren. They just called me right back. I enjoy every aspect of comics. I enjoy the stories. I enjoy the characters. I enjoy the art. I'm a huge fan. I see you got lots of art on your wall. I'm a huge fan of comic art. I can just sit there and stare at comic book pencils for hours. Assuming they're decent pencilers. I love that comics gives you an unlimited special effects budget. You can really do whatever you can imagine, and the artist can draw without any special effects limitations other than what's your imagination, what's the artist's imagination.
Maybe a 100,000 person crowd.
Well, yeah.
You're
Yeah. Well, now Photoshop, it's a whole lot easier. Stamp, right?
But like car versus rolling car, same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, I love the idea that I love the idea of collaboration. I love the idea that there's something that I have worked on with other creative minds that might bring a smile to someone else's face when they consume it.
Yeah.
That's why for me.
Yeah. I guess for me it was a matter of I really gosh, I don't know. When I started writing, I was as an actor. I was working in the theater. I was doing regional theater in a group, and in Florida there. And I just really wanted to. I kind of wanted to have my finger on the pulse of like what's the prime way to get into this wave of culture to where you can be a voice and influence and such as this, And it was like Batman Begins came out, and then Iron Man had come out, and I was like. And I was a comic fan as a kid, and I'm like, this seems to be the important thing right now. And, I wanted to get in. I wanted to get in and be an influential voice. So I started researching. I spent a lot of time researching comics, and then just got back in as a fan again as an adult. And, and from there, it was just, like I said, shouting to my neighbor Mario in the parking lot. That's all it really took. But, it was also a matter of getting wrapped up in the world because like I met Anthony, my artist, who we worked on Prophet, Moriarty, Red City together. And, he's like, you want to go to San Diego Comic-Con this year? You can find out a lot and learn a lot. And I was like, okay, back then you could just kind of call and get in, so I'm like, oh, I'm part of the culture now, So it was a whole thing where comics was to me, it was something that that was bigger than myself, but that I could gain entry to. And, and the influence of it was just so apparent, and it was through all that I became like a real comic person to where I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to learn all the things and do the work and make this happen. So I guess that's kind of my story was, I was trying to find a thing, but I was very serious about it. I wasn't the guy running into Sam Rash saying, "What's your most expensive guitar?" I really wanted to do something that mattered, and I felt it seemed like comic creators were doing the thing that mattered, and I think I was probably correct in thinking that at the time. So, yeah. There you go. I never really thought of that before, but
That's a good one. No, I mean, I just comics were always around growing up. I remember when I first started reading them, I would get them at the pharmacy. You know, they'd be in the spinner rack, and eventually I had accumulated enough of them that my dad said, "Well, you know that there's a shop here in town that all they sell is comics," and I was like,
Yeah.
So I started going there all the time. Yeah, I didn't realize at that point the comic books only came out once a week, so I would go into the shop like 3 times a week and just buy stuff. And it got to the point where I became good friends with the as much as like a 12-year-old kid can be, but I became friends with the people that ran the shop. And as I came in there more and more, they just thought like, wow, we got to keep this kid buying stuff, because honestly, I was probably keeping the shop open. I didn't even realize it. I can't imagine that in my hometown comics were super popular. So, I would go in on my first venture and buy all the Marvel and DC stuff that I would read. And then the other times I'd come in, they just start picking off like the most random, like indie black and white comics that they were getting in and pushing those on me. So, but that was awesome because I really got exposed to such a wide variety of things. I wasn't just reading superheroes. I was reading really weird titles like The Tick and Scud the Disposable Assassin and all these like really weird black and white comics that really, really actually informed a lot of what I do now in my comic work. And so I just loved it. But then, I hit high school and comics, don't win you a lot of social points in high school. So I kind of fell off. And then midway through my 20s, like I just was like, why did I ever stop? So I just caught up on like 10 years worth of stuff and just started ordering comics off of Amazon left and right, just seeing what all I'd missed. And then by that point I was living in Orlando. So I started going back to the local shops there. And I was like, I should do this. Like I've always wanted to do this. Why am I not doing this? So I just kind of said, okay. At the beginning of 2011, I was like, I'm going to start writing. I wrote like a year's worth of scripts that nobody ever saw, never became anything, just to kind of train my brain to work in that visual way. And I've always kind of thought visually anyway, so it felt like a natural fit. And then I started putting stuff out online and artists were coming to me saying, yes, I'll draw this. So I was like, well, if people are going to if they're going to keep saying yes to me, I'm going to keep going. So, and once you complete that first one, you guys know how it is. You get that bug. You're like, okay, let's do another one. Let's do something bigger and better. And so, it's always been a love for me. It's always been there. It's something that I've always taken comfort in. It's, why would I not want to potentially be somebody else's first comic book?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'll give my example, I guess. But is there anybody in the industry that you guys felt like that you connected with that was kind of helping you with stuff? Like for me personally, it was Jimmy Palmiotti. The Marvel Knights Daredevil had just come out, and he was at a show. I was living in New York at the time. He was at a show in Philly, Wizard World Philly. So I took my books and I went, and Quesada was there as well. Quesada was at the Marvel table. Jimmy was at his own booth. And, I went up and I talked to Jimmy, and I was the fanboy. Oh my God, it's the greatest thing ever. Could you sign my books? This is so great. And Jimmy is super nice. And he was like, hey, we're going to be down at the bar after the show if you want to come down and hang out. So I'm like, all right. So I come down, talk to him some more, tell him I really want to write this stuff. And he was super nice, didn't have to. He's like, here's my email. Send me what you're working on. Stupid me, I'd written my script as like a novel. And so I sent him this book script, and he could have just been like, oh God, this guy's not worth my time. But, instead he sends me back one of his Jonah Hex scripts, and he's like, look at this, look at how, how I broke this down, break down your story like this, send it back to me. And, and I'll let you know what I think. And he did. Like, he's been, to this day, he's looked at stuff that I've worked on. He's been super nice about stuff. He'll give me advice, like, just what he thinks in the industry, what, how he sees things, how it was for him breaking in, all the different roles he did. So for me personally, like, he's just been that guy that, has been in the industry forever, is really good about stuff. He's really, he's honest about it. He's not mean, but he's honest. He'll tell you if, hey, don't even try that. The first time I was going to do a Kickstarter, I sent him, what we were working on. He's like, dude, you're not ready. Don't do it yet. So I don't know if you guys had anybody like that in the industry that you kind of met or are familiar with that you could reach out to and say, hey, this is what I'm working on. What do you think?
Yeah, when I first got started, I was very fortunate to meet Lorene Haynes and Dave Dorman. Lorene has since passed, but most comic book fans remember her because she did all the color work for Mike Grell's Green Arrow Longbow Hunters, which is a gorgeous looking book. And she had done a lot of work with a lot of independent comics, and of course Dave Dorman is just a super awesome painter that did a lot of Star Wars stuff. Star Trek? No, he did Star Wars. I know the difference, all right, but I'm trying to. I can't, yeah, he did Star Wars.
Questioning your friend.
And he's just it's a super painter, and they were an item at the time. There were a couple. And they lived I'm from Mississippi, and they lived in Pensacola, and I would see them at a lot of the local shows. And Lorene, after like the second meeting, she's like, "Here's our phone number, just call anytime." And I would spend hours on the phone with her. And when I was getting ready to send pitches out, she would like, "Oh, don't do this," and she would do the same kind of thing. So yeah, those two were very very instrumental in my early career. Little side nugget about Jimmy. Jimmy's the first one that ever took me to a Marvel party at San Diego. He grabbed me by the elbow and said, "Come on, we're going to a Marvel party." And an asterisk to that is I gave Jimmy when I was an editor, I gave Jimmy his very first ever published penciling work. Jimmy was an inker, and he had inked a bunch of stuff. I don't think he inks anymore. He just writes now. I said just writes. But he started in the industry as an inker, but no one would give him penciling work, and I gave Jimmy his first published penciling work.
Oh,
Well, nice.
I love Jimmy.
yeah.
I met Jimmy once, and he was really nice. Again, yeah, it was at a con. It was at San Diego, maybe 2015 or something like that, and who introduced us, but it was my friend Tony, I think, introduced us. It's like, "Hey, Daniel wrote Moriarty." He's like, "Oh, I know that. Cool."
Yeah.
That was my, I was like, "Oh, thanks, Jimmy Falmione." It was for me. Jim Kruger was the first pro that I met. And he really helped me out, just advice and just a lot of like the stories you guys are telling. My wife and I had moved to LA, and this was, it was 18 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, because we had been in LA for 2 weeks. Like, I met Jim that long ago. Holy cow. Was it that long ago? It had to have been. Yeah, because we had only been here a few.
Time flies.
No.
Man. Oh, wow. But,
you guys are seeing a midlife crisis in action right now.
Yeah, I know, right?
It was a couple of years after I first met him, maybe, that he, gave me the gosh, I don't remember. But anyways, it was Jim. Okay. So my wife and I went to this event. It was at Hollywood Presbyterian, which is right over the hill, big church. And they had this thing of this panel discussion with all these amazing people that worked in comics and animation and stuff. And two people that I met that I still know, that I keep in touch with, were Jim Kruger and Doug Jones. And if you guys know Doug, he's an actor, performer, and he was Pan in Pan's Labyrinth. He was Ape Sapien in Hellboy, and he's in Star Trek. He's Saru in Star Trek Discovery right now. Second build on that show. So. And so these were two wonderful, terrific guys, and Jim, I just got in touch with him. He had coffee with me one morning, Saturday morning, and he just gave me some real basic advice, and that made everything possible, And I told him that after Moriarty started coming out, I'm like, "Jim, you don't know this, but just like when you met and had coffee with that one time, it made everything possible." So I'm always grateful to Jim for that. And he even wrote the foreword to my first book, Prophet, which is my book, which was, looking back, I'm like, I can't believe I asked Jim to write the foreword to my book, but he was so nice and he did it, So another person that I've met that has been very helpful and always very kind is Scott Lebdell. Yeah, Scott, and I think that, I first talked to him back in 2011. He came to the Moriarty release party, and I don't remember. I didn't know who he was.
Mr. X-Men.
Yeah, well, I was like, hey, I really like your book, and I'd like to introduce you to a friend who's a producer because I just think it would make a really good movie. And random guy, I'm like, okay, here's my email, and back and forth, stuff like that, and like that particular thing didn't work out. But it's just like, anytime he meets somebody that he thinks might be interested in Moriarty, he'll send them my way. And just recently, I was having a conversation with him about it, and he's like, oh, I don't want to write it. I don't want to be a producer. I want to do that. He's like, look, help out. He came to my signing, to my release party, with hopes of linking me up with somebody so I could get a movie made, and he was going to get nothing from it. So it's pretty outrageous, but for such a successful guy, he's done so much. It was very kind, and he continues to be really cool like that now. So I was really happy to see him get success with
Happy Death Day. Yeah.
In addition to all of his comic successes, I know he wanted that for a really long time as well. And last time I talked to him, he was telling me about the last time I was an overnight success. 5 years before that, when I was an overnight success. But yeah, so those would be some folks. And then also, as I mentioned earlier, just knowing Dave Lanfear is a good thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I've heard.
Yeah.
I need someone to introduce me to Dave. I don't know Dave.
I can introduce you to Dave. He's
Perfect.
super nice, super chill, super easy to get along with. So yeah.
Very cool. Now, see, I didn't really have anybody when I was first starting off. Well, except for Roland. Roland was kind of like my voice of reason that I ran a lot of stuff by. Thankfully, after I'd made a little bit of inroads, I ended up making friends with an editor named David Hedgecock, who worked at Ape Entertainment and then went on to work at IDW for a while. And he was just very gracious with his time. I sent him everything I did, and he would read it, and he'd provide feedback, and he even gave me a couple opportunities to pitch on a couple things. Nothing that panned out, unfortunately, but he no longer works at the company just due to the COVID downsizing stuff. But he's a good guy, and his notes and his thoughts and his feedback always meant the world to me. That he had so much on his plate, and the fact that he would look at these crazy comics that I sent him and just give me some things to consider was huge. And so I'll buy him a coffee one day.
Absolutely. Yeah. I definitely had that experience with David when we were first putting together Prophet, and then we were putting together Moriarty. He gave me feedback and thoughts on that. And then when Moriarty VR came out, I brought him over to the booth and showed him that. And so he was always very receptive. That was the thing. It was always very surprising, because you wouldn't think that he would be interested, but he just seems to be that's generally curious and interested, and that's probably how he's been able to do all the things he's done.
Yeah, definitely. Super good guy.
Yeah. I find a lot of generosity in this kind of way in the comic book industry in general. I think that there's a lot of people who, and not everybody, all right, there's always the exceptions, but I think a lot of comic book creators are very generous with their time and genuinely want to see others make comics. I think when they love it, they want to see others do the same thing, and I think there's a lot of that from my experience anyway.
Yeah.
Well, I think it goes to the collaborative nature of comics, as everybody wants to kind of work together and find the best ideas possible and find the best finished product possible. So we can't help but, want to see other people succeed and encourage them and offer anything that we can. I mean, there's a reason that if I can't write on a comic, but I have a chance to letter on it, I'll do that just to help people out or to be part of a cool project. So there's always, I'm just looking for neat things that I like to make cool things with people that I like is what it really boils down to.
Yeah.
So I guess, is Daniel the only one that's written something that's public domain, like IP?
Anything?
Is that you're the only one of us though that's written something that's public, right?
No, Roland adapted Wizard of Oz, and
I did Wizard of Oz.
Finn, and
Huckleberry Finn. I worked on Miss Fury.
I guess to both of you then, when you're using that public domain piece, do you do a lot of research on it? Do you just use your knowledge of those characters and stuff like that and write it as your own story? Or how do you go into that?
You start, Roland.
Okay. Well, obviously it depends on what the publisher wants. Like for Huckleberry Finn and Wizard of Oz, they just wanted an adaptation of the novel, right? Of the novels. And well, then for Miss Fury was a superhero from the 1940s. Today, if we see, I didn't have anything to worry about when I wrote the very first one because Miss Fury hadn't been done except for the 1940s. Well, if you were gonna do Miss Fury today, you would have to be careful because there's the Malibu version, there's the Billy Tucci has done a version, and I think somebody else, Dynamite did a version, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you'd have to be careful in that your what you do can only come from the original, right? You can't do anything that the new adaptations have done unless it's in the original, right? So so they can't, like, if you went out to do a Miss Fury, and I haven't read the new ones for reasons I won't get into. I haven't read any of the new Miss Fury stuff. I've read the old stuff, so I know what's in there. And so if it's in the original, even if the new ones did it, you're okay, right? Because you're doing an adaptation of the original content. But as far as research, that was the extent for me. They didn't really want me to do a lot of variations over the original.
Yeah. For me, the thing was that what was so neat about it was, Moriarty is an iconic character that everybody knows, at least know who Sherlock and Moriarty are and what they are, so that's a nice thing. And then the other nice thing that I didn't even realize is that I hadn't known about anybody else doing a Moriarty comic. There had been some novels and author's name's flying out of my mind, but he wrote a lot of James Bond novels too. I can't remember right now, but anyways.
Ian Fleming?
No,
Okay.
he did some of the James Bond stuff after Ian Fleming.
Okay.
But John something. Anyway, somebody look it up. But yeah. So there had been some novels, Return to Moriarty, stuff like that, but it had never been done as a comic book. And I was like, well, then, in 100 years of Sherlock Holmes adaptations, a Moriarty comic. And then when I was taking that around, showing it to people, I had so many creators like saying, "Oh, I wish I thought of that." I was like, yes, something. But
Sorry, the hazards of working from home and being home with everybody.
It's fine. It's totally fine. But also the other nice thing about it was that Moriarty is not really present in the original stories. It's like he's a legend that Sherlock Holmes talks about, and everything with Moriarty happens off stage. The only time that you possibly see him is in the final problem when they're in the train taking off to the continent, Sherlock and Watson. Watson says he sees a tall man pushing his way through the crowd, and he thinks that might be Moriarty. That's like the only physical presence of Moriarty in an original Conan Doyle Sherlock story. So it's like I have all this legend to play with, and I don't have to be too, beholden to anything.
Right.
And I didn't read those novels because I just say things wrong. I was like, I don't want to.
Nope. Don't read them.
Yeah. So I don't want to accidentally subconsciously be like, that was a good idea. So yeah, and everybody. It was funny in 2009 when I was first showing this to people. Like I had Ashcan at conventions, and they're like, "From Star Trek: The Next Generation." Sure. Because that's where a lot of people knew him from, I guess. But so a lot of people thought of Moriarty as a fleshed out, realized character. He wasn't. Popular culture made him that. So I was able to I was able to do a lot with him. The thing was, I went back and reread and hailed a lot of Sherlock Holmes because I'd read a lot of it when I was younger. I went back and read a lot of it and did some research that way, just because it needed to be in line with sort of the tone and the sort of the feel of the original stories, even though I was incorporating bigger high adventure elements with steampunk machinery and gadgetry and whatnot. It still needed to feel like I was in the Sherlock Holmes world. So yeah, that was definitely a thing that there was I did do a lot of research that way. but you know, and I had to kind of lure Anthony Dietchidue, my artist. I had to kind of lure him in because, you know, at first I was like, a new Moriarty comic. He's like, period.
Yeah.
And I was like, think of it as like a horror movie, like with men in cloaks and top hats and fog-laden streets. He's like, okay, yeah.
You spoke to the artist in him.
Yeah, I brought him over to my place, and we just watched a ton of, like, I collected all these video clips. I had gone and gotten films shot in 1911 and put those on. Look at the look and the feel of the people and the costumes. We looked at some of the Jeremy Brett, Sherlock Holmes from BBC Granada TV from like 1984 when they did those Adventures of Sherlock Holmes adaptations that were so wonderful. We looked at some of that. We looked at like From Hell, the Johnny Depp adaptation of From Hell, because he knew the book, but we looked at the original book, but we looked at the movie, and we looked at a lot of stuff like that. And that's kind of how I brought him in. And, you know, I was also telling him there's kind of a almost apocalyptic feel to what we're going to do. It's going to be almost Blade Runner in a way like that, you know, with London being the city on the brink of World War I and all that. So, you know, I'd done a lot of research on the history and all that. And that's how I was able to kind of bring Anthony in, and he kind of really started jiving with the project there. So that was a lot of the, so I did do a lot of research and stuff, but I had a lot of, that was long.
I would love to hear.
No one's ever done the comic book before.
Yeah.
No, I would love to hear like Anthony's version of those events. Like, well, Daniel showed me 8 hours of movies, but it was really that he had a bowl of Snickers on his coffee table, and that's what sold me.
Yeah.
I just make a comic, and
He said he'd give me Bristol board.
Right.
Yeah, you know. But I was really happy that he was along for the ride. And like I said, I worked with him continuously for about 7 years, and then it was like when that time was up and we weren't working together anymore, I was like, I miss my little friend. So we used to talk every day.
Do you guys have any plans to do anything else?
Everything's still up in the air right now, you know.
Gotcha.
I'm not really making a new comic right now, but you
Shame
know,
on you.
I know, but I just wrote my first novel, and like I said, the one that I spent 5 years on most recently, Bloodworth, is under option, and
Cool.
working on some stuff with my Prophet book as well as far as film goes. But yeah. So, you know, and Anthony's doing a lot of storyboards and stuff. And, you know, that's what those guys do to really make money, is they do storyboards, you know, and they do comics when they can.
So did either one of you guys ever get somebody come up to your table and be like, this isn't my Sherlock Holmes, this isn't my Moriarty, or this isn't, you know, my Miss Fury, what are you doing? This is, you know, you ruined this character.
I've had people come up to me and say, you're not Mark Twain. And I'm like, no, I'm not. Like, why is your name on it? Why does your name say that you wrote Huckleberry Finn? Because I wrote the script adaptation of Huckleberry Finn. It says right here, Mark Twain wrote Huckleberry Finn. Yeah, but you're not Mark Twain. I've had people come up and do that to me. As goofy as that sounds.
That's
when you take a $5 bill and light it on fire in front of them. That's why I did it.
You never know what Wes is going to come up with. You know, that's what I love about Wes. You know?
Yeah.
I shouldn't be allowed to talk.
Yeah. Let me just run out and get a roll of $5 bills so I can do that very thing, Wes.
Yeah. You know, I never got I didn't get a lot of pushback, but I did get a lot of people. We would get in discussions about the character because they're like, well, why do I want to read a series about a sociopath? You know, and I'm like,
why wouldn't you?
Well, yeah, but like, who says he is? You know, I mean, my Moriarty's not a sociopath. He's obsessive compulsive. Thank you. And I met I was at a friend's birthday party, and there was a lady there who's a therapist. And I'm like, I'm working on this Moriarty comic, and could you help me diagnose him, because I don't want him to be a sociopath. So we talked it over, and that was a very useful conversation. Somebody I met at a party, and you know. But, you know, I mean, the Conan Doyle stories, it doesn't say Moriarty is a sociopath. And like I said, it never appears on stage, really. So it's pretty open. But everybody has this in their mind that he is. You know, I don't even think of him as evil. You know, that's how we wrote it. He's not evil. It's just doing what he needs to do.
Nice.
Yeah.
So what have you guys got coming up? Well, I mean, we know Daniel told us he doesn't have anything comic related, but I guess in general, like, what are you guys working on? What's what can we see from you in the future?
Me first again.
Yeah.
I guess we'll just always go clockwise.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I got a handful of things that going on. I'm wrapping up the first my first new cat and mouse arc, working on number 4, but I'm also already working on the actually I'm further along on the new number 1 than I am on number 4. So I'll be doing a new cat and mouse arc when this first one completes. I just did a Kickstarter in November for a new series called Trumps. Not political at all. It's about cards and not politics. Which is, it's a science fiction superhero kind of thing. Obviously, or maybe not so obvious, there are 4 kingdoms at war, right? That one's about halfway done, so we got to work on that one. I'm working on another one that I just got a message from the artist today. He said he just finished the last page, which I haven't gone to Dropbox and look at yet because I hope he's not listening. I've just been too busy to get over there. Which is kind of a, what's that?
So go, man! It's your last page.
I know. It's the last page, right?
Go now.
But it's kind of a superhero parody called The Rejects, and I make fun of we make fun of a whole bunch of superheroes, but it's really kind of about finding your place. And then I'm doing another one called Silverline Team Up, which we're going to put Champion, which is a character of mine that's been around from Cat and Mouse since the late 80s, and Miss Fury. So I'm definitely bringing back the public domain character for my use there. This is why I'm not reading any of the Dino. As much I love Billy Tucci, but I'm not reading any of that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I still have this idea of I want to make a Spawn versus Moriarty happen at some point. I got to get a conversation with Todd at that at some point.
Yeah.
But, I don't know, but yeah. So
does Dave Lanfear know Todd McFarlane? Can he be the middleman there?
Yeah, I'll have to talk to him about that.
He probably does. I don't know.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Dave knew Eric Stevenson, who's at Image, and that was really the last link that got us signed at Image was.
Yeah.
I've been talking to him about it, and then Dave was like, "Hey, come on over. Eric's over here. I'll introduce you," and that made it happen. So Dave was the glue there, but
he vouched for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's it's like we've been saying here, like with our experiences with the pros that we know, with Jimmy and Scott and all that. It's the generosity of people, and and I know that all of us are going to be returning that to the community that are coming up now.
Absolutely.
So it's a good thing. But as far as what I have going on, like I said, I just wrote my first novel, and we're working on trying to get that published. My manager and I are working on trying to get that published. We'll see how that goes.
What kind of novel is it?
It's a science fiction novel. It's like a
cool.
It's called The Aura, and I describe it as Gone Girl meets Blade Runner. So there you go.
Yeah.
Hollywood's calling.
I was going to say, that's a very Hollywood thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, high concept.
Yeah.
So that's the book there, and I want to do more. I'm going to write more novels. I'm going to see how that goes. But I'm putting together a photography book, which I'm going to be publishing soon, and I don't know how I'll release that exactly, but I'll hopefully, I wanted to start doing some art shows for my photography when shows come back. And so it's kind of a graphic photo art. It's not just like scenery photography or portraiture, it's graphic photo art. And I put together a book of that, and I've put some galley copies off to a printer right now. So we'll see how that goes.
Cool.
And and like I said, the properties that have been optioned, with Bloodworth right now, it's like we're holding until February to be sending out to any more buyers to see what's going on with that there. But it's at a studio right now. It's at a studio, and they're basically trying to hook in like the director and stuff. So we'll see how that goes. But they put together a really nice package with that, and I'm very excited to be able to tell details on that when I can.
Sure.
Wes.
My turn again. Fantastic. So earlier this year, I decided to put out my most recent comic book series, which is called Bug Slugger, which is about a superhero that powers up by using slap bracelets, because that's a marketable idea. Anyway, so I put that out in the midst of a pandemic, which was a terrible idea because we had enough going on in the world. I hoped that it would offer some levity to people, but instead everybody was preoccupied with other things and nobody bought it. So the artist and I are gonna go and do a physical release probably mid-year next year. Probably try to pitch it around to a few places. But as you heard, that marketable idea, we're not gonna count on that. So we're gonna probably maybe go Kickstarter route, maybe just do some print on demand and actually get it into people's hands so they can enjoy the zany story that we put together. Beyond that, I've got a work for hire comic project that I can't talk about. I've got some more cool lettering stuff coming up, and mainly I'm selling out to my day job because my day job is awesome, and it's a lot of work, but it's very gratifying. So
pays the bills too.
Pays the bills, lets me raise a child, lets me get my wife flowers once in a while. So
nice.
that's kind of what I've been enjoying.
Now, are you going to actually make some of those slap bracelets?
Yeah, so that's going to be my question.
Well, of course. I mean,
Okay,
if we were doing shows, I mean, we've already we know where to get them. We know we just have to pull the trigger on it. So of course, that's that's the type of marketing that only the 90s can produce.
Yeah.
So,
I
wanted to ask you about your book about Ultima.
Yeah, I did two of them actually. I did the first one back in 2018, which it's a nonfiction book. I grew up on a video game called Ultima Online, which is my favorite video game of all time. The series is called the Braving Britannia series. So I did a first book in 2018. It's a nonfiction book that interviews 35 people who played the game and talks about how it affected their lives, and myself included. Did very well. It was independently published, got featured by Wired, by Gamma Sutra, got featured by VenderBeat. It got me on a TED Talks podcast recently. So then I decided, wow, this is doing pretty well. I should probably write a sequel. So I just released the sequel to it back in October, which has also been doing very well. But I also don't want to think about Ultima at this point for a long time. So I might do a third one, finish out the trilogy. But there's other things that I'd like to do too in the meantime. But awesome experience. Met some fantastic people. Really enjoyed every second of it.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Thanks for asking about that.
Yeah, sure. The whole time we've been sitting here, I'm like waiting to. I actually wanted to talk to you about that. Just tell us.
Well, usually when I start talking about that, if it's not like a game-centric audience, people's eyes just kind of gloss over, and I realize that I'm losing them. So, yeah, you gotta read the room,
Yeah.
Well, we all want to know.
Yeah.
Cool.
Nice. So, and to go back to like the whole, we all want to create together and for that kind of stuff. Like I had this idea this year, and this year has just been crazy for me. Like productive wise, I put out 3 books, and but I can't go to a show to promote these books. So instead that this is good, but this is bad because I can't go and I can't sell these books. But I've always wanted to do. And I pitched this idea like a couple years ago, and I couldn't really get a lot of interest. But the original thought was I wanted to create like people that are in the industry, that have been in the industry, they're a writer or an artist, with somebody that's like good enough to break in, or somebody that's trying to break in and understands enough of how to do a script, how to draw, and use that as like they tell these short stories where it's newcomer with artist with Mark Wade, or something like that, so that person's learning something from that creator while they work on that short 5 or 6 page story, and then we're also putting together a book to put out to people, so that then there's that interest for that, but hopefully it gets that person one step closer to getting somewhere in the industry. And so it kind of evolved from that to I've met like all these creators and stuff recently, and like I think last year, 2 years ago, I met Steve Irwin, and super nice guy. And I talked to him about, it's like, I have this idea. I want to do a book. We'll contribute the money to Hero Initiative. Whatever we make from it, we'll go to Hero Initiative, to help creators. And Steve was like, I'm in, but can I get Paul Kupperberg to write the story? And I'm like, sure, I'm not going to say no to that. So it's kind of snowballed to where some of these guys are like, hey, I used to work with this guy and I'd really like to work with him again. Can we see if he would do it?
Yeah.
So it's been super cool. And like for me, like I'm lucky enough, I work with Phil Hester, who I love and who's been, you know, in the industry forever.
I got some Phil Hester artwork right here.
Yeah. It's been super cool. Like Chris Voshalo has said that, you know, he'll contribute a cover. I've worked with Victor Santos. He's going to do a cover.
Cool.
Andy Kuhn is going to, you know, give us some art. And we've got, you know, some other people that are still working on stuff and getting me scripts and stuff. So we can't name everybody that's on it yet.
Right.
But it's cool to see this come to fruition and, you know, be able to put this out there eventually and you know, have these people work together that may not have worked together before or may not have worked together in a long time. And it just, you know, I'm hoping it rekindles some stuff for people that they may have read Kupperberg stuff, you know, way back in the 80s. Or, you know, may have been a Steve Irwin fan from Deathstroke. You know, with Wolfman. And so I hope that it does well. And, you know, because the whole goal of it is that to help the Hero Initiative. I don't like seeing that, you know, these creators that when all they do is create and then, you know, they don't have health insurance or they run into these health problems like that. They don't have the money for it. And, you know, like for me, it's like I work full time, but then I write comics as well. So it's, you know, I kind of see both sides and, you know, I'd like to give back to that. I'd like to give back to that community that gave me so much when I was growing up and, you know, reading comics.
Yeah. Ooh, I think that's a great thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Good luck, man. I'm anxious to hear more about that project.
Yeah. It's been crazy because it's been COVID's here. We got a ton of free time. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Pencils are back up. We got some deadlines. We're going to have to push that back a couple of months, but we can still get something to you. So, you know, originally we're hoping for the end of this year, but it's looking like February, maybe of next year.
It's great. I mean,
that's not far away at all.
Yeah. It's something that's about stuff that's going on right now. It's like some people are kind of available a little more.
Yeah.
You know, and like another thing I've been doing lately, I've been doing a lot of music journalism. I'm writing for Guitar Girl magazine, and I have my own interview show like this. So I've interviewed a lot of musicians and stuff like that, and there's people are available for interviews. You know, I just talked to Kaki King in New York, and I interviewed
Kaki King.
Yeah, she's super cool. Molly Tuttle in Nashville, interviewed her, and I back right at the beginning of all this, I got to interview Daniel Lanois. I was like my hero, you know. He produced all his U2 albums and stuff, you know. That's like something else. That's something else about right now is some people are kind of a little more available than they were. So, you know, I don't know. It's not a good thing, but in that case, not a bad thing either. So.
No, but now's the time for those people who maybe do want to reach out to folks who inspire them or mean a lot to them. Like now's the time to strike. I mean, especially on like Twitter or social media. I find too that a lot of people are readily available, or at least are kind of setting aside some blocks of time to maybe do like weekly Q&As or even. So, you know, if you have somebody that you think that you could learn from or just want to kind of establish a connection with, I think now is the time to jump on that.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So, or a simple bunch of comic guys and have a groupthink conversation.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first one of this I did, it was interesting because I brought Stephen Miller on from Full Sail, you know, the movie director, and then I had Jimmy and I had Justin Gray, who he's written a ton of stuff with. Mm-hmm. And, you know, sure enough, Stephen's like, oh yeah, I know Jimmy. I met him he knew like the guy that played Jonah Hex, and they had met through that person. And, you know, my first thought is like, there's probably nobody that doesn't know Jimmy and Son, you know. So but it was funny. Like Stephen, you know, was a comic kid. He grew up, you know, he told us the books that he read, and that kind of got him into wanting to do the movie stuff. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
I bet Jimmy knows Dave Lanphier. That's all.
Yeah, I bet so.
Probably. Yeah.
So if you watch this and you're thinking about attending Full Sail, just a forewarning, you won't see Roland until the end of your Full Sail career.
Yeah. I am 4 months from they've shifted since y'all been in it, right? I'm 4 months from graduation now. So once you get to me, you'll be that close to graduation.
Well, worth the wait.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
I tell it's a comic book class where we read and we write comic books.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Pretty awesome.
Well, you letter comics too. Don't forget that. You learn how to letter, which is what I missed out on.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's why I've had to hire Wes to letter our comics because he had that benefit. But
Cool. I didn't know you lettered, Wes. There's something I've learned there. So
Yeah, I've lettered hundreds of comic books at this point. I spent like the last 2 years as almost like the staff letterer for a comic book publisher. So they kept me pretty busy, and I'm now just, because of the pandemic and because I have a young child running around the house, I'm slowing down a lot on that. But I've gotten to work on so many cool books over the last couple of years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Good for you.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it's actually, you know, probably if we were to trace it back closely enough, the lettering component in my class probably can trace back to Wes as thanks for that.
Well, it's interesting because like I never learned how to, you know, that wasn't something that was a part of your class when I went through it. It was something that I just taught myself just to save some money, and then it ended up creating its own business more or less.
And you were very instrumental for me because I knew old school lettering, and not that I could do it. I mean, I still got a doggone Ames lettering guide.
Ooh,
you know,
look at that thing.
Yeah, this is a classic right here.
A collector's item.
But you know, I had, you know, so I knew all the stuff. It's just I had never tried to do it since hand lettering days.
Sure.
And you were very instrumental in showing me some of the resources for that. I'm like, well, this is really cool, and you gave me a nice little lettering gift, and
that's right.
I just say I don't know if
forgot
you remember
about that.
Yeah.
Now that you're saying that, I do remember that. Well, cool, man. Well, it's, you know, I always like seeing what your classes produce whenever you share those with me, and I actually provided Roland a bunch of unlettered pages from a bunch of my comics, so to see them come back with like different dialogue and different character names, it's hilarious, but it's awesome.
Yeah. In fact, you know, if you want to give me some, Daniel, if you want to give me some unlettered pages from Moriarty, or any of the other projects that you feel comfortable with, and what I usually try to do is I have 3 pages, and I usually make sure there's like an establishing shot in the first page, and then I make them write a 3-page Act 1 and letter it. So yeah, you know.
Oh, so that they'll write their own script according to the images.
Yes.
Cool.
Yes. Yeah. And you know, and I mean, they have no idea what it is, right? Yeah. So they'll look at it, and it's the artwork will be completely foreign to them. So they have to create something out of thin air. They have to make up the story, and we gotta talk them kind of through it, how to go through the process, and so they come up with the first act, and then they letter it using Adobe Illustrator, and submit PDFs as their assignment.
That's cool.
It is very entertaining.
I'd love to do that. Yeah, just shoot me an email because I'd like.
Sure, I will absolutely.
I'll look through and see what would be the best thing for them to work with. So
yeah, and that's the way I usually because I try to kind of rotate. So actually, when I have big classes is when it's a problem, because I've got a good 15, 16, 17, 18. Three pages, but if my classes get to be about 24, 25, 26, I'm like, oh, what can I send them? Because I try not to send any of the students the same pages. Yeah. I want them to all have something different, so that as they're looking at it, it's equally enjoyable for the students.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll send you an email.
Yeah, please do. Yeah. Fun.
Do you ever cringe, Wes, as a letterer when you see get like some of the stuff from Roland, and the bubbles, like the pointers in the wrong area, or
honestly, it's kept me up at night sometimes, but but here's the thing, is that if I also go back and I look at some of the first things that I did, that keeps me up at night too. So until you do like hundreds of pages, it's like anything else, you put in the 10,000 hours and hopefully you get good at it. So I mean, you take it with a grain of salt.
Conventions.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess I just approach conventions differently than you guys. Is all. Yeah.
Big carnation.
It's been a very revealing conversation.
You know, when you don't like what you hear, you just start sniffing that carnation and looking away.
Yeah.
That monocle a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
A Rockefeller.
All right. Well, be mindful of your time because we said we'd go about an hour and a half. So hopefully, you know, we'll all, when this clears up, be able to go to a Hall of Fame and, you know, get together since we're all in different parts of the U.S.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
It was
cool.
great to hang out with you guys, man. This is fun.
Yeah, awesome
Yeah.
to see you all. I mean, I just talked to Roland a couple days ago, but I haven't seen you since it's been a couple months, Danny and
Yeah.
Mark. I always appreciate you opening a line of dialogue and talking about what's going on, and happy to help with your projects when I can.
You,
So,
you can be honest, Wes. It's usually Mark saying, "Hey, how do you do this? Hey, how do I this lettering look okay? Because I don't know about this guy."
that's okay, man. That's again, you know, it's all if you're the fact that you're even asking is more than a handful of other people are going to do. So why would I not take a look at it and offer what I can? These guys would do it too.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's like when students, you know, come to me, like Johnny with his Kickstarter recently, you know, they're like, I don't want to bother you. And I'm like, you have no idea how very few people ever come.
Yeah.
Questions or even come, you know what I mean? It's like, so yeah, that's part of why I guess we're happy to help.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's like, I didn't even put on pants today. Of course I'll look at your comment. Like it's not a busy one at all.
Please don't stand up.
Yeah. These 9 months have been dangerous. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, gentlemen, for coming on and you know,
Mark.
sharing your stories, and hopefully someone, you know, got some good takeaways from it. And you know, if anybody has any questions, and I'm sure that, you know, the majority of us are open to you know, someone reaching out and asking away. But
yeah, man. Cool. Well, thanks, guys. Thanks.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, all you guys take care.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.